First hardcore show I ever saw, you gotta remember, I left New York in 1980. So when I left New York, there was no fucking hardcore. The people who I saw when I was going to shows before I left New York in 1980, I saw Ira, Harley. I remember saying, what the fuck is that kid doing behind the drum? I knew Jack Rabbit, but he was more like a punk rocker. He wasn't a hardcore guy. So I go to California and hardcore is hit and I'm like, fuck, this is it. The first show was at the California Hall in San Francisco. And weirdly enough, I'm like running to Bill Graham in the front. I remember seeing him in Apocalypse Now. That's how I recognized him. I go, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, it's my show. I go, show? It was Dead Kennedys, Fear, and I think the Circle Jerks at the California Hall. It's a huge spot, and it was packed. You had everybody coming up from LA, guys coming down from Reno. It was packed and solid. And a crazy fucking show. And I asked Graham, you gonna keep doing punk shows? He's like, you know, you guys, you're too out of control. It's too much chaos, you know? You know who Graham reminded me of, in a weird way? Bleecker Bob. If you put two of those guys together in a room, you would not be able to tell who you were talking to. God's honest truth. Easy. 2+2. I know it was a special place because I can never accurately describe to somebody what it was like, you know, at all. Yeah, I mean, everybody's got their faves, and CB's is a touchstone, and you know, Max's Kansas City, Manitoba's just closed. People have emotional connections to those, but for me, it was 2+2. From the, you know, from catching Dimitri sleeping on the pile of garbage under the sidewalk grate right in front of the club to, you know, Mike Ness getting his ass kicked around the corner. I mean, 2+2. And then I would have to say, craziest place I've been that had music was Giorgio Gomoleschi's place, The Garage. And that was clearly, with the lawyers the way they are today, if that was around today, you'd be sued. I'm shocked nobody died there, you know, with the 4-foot drop, 40-foot drop in the middle. Crazy. Well, you know what? What I really appreciate is that Sick of All video. What is it? Push It Down or something like that, where they show the different styles, different slab styles. Step down. And I'm glad they got me in there, which was the California style, because the California style was very high, you know, because the clubs were bigger, right? So there was no circle. It was just a kind of a chaotic kind of mishmash, and you had to like keep your eyes open and see. So you would stick very high, you know, you could hit people, push people. But then New York came and his clubs were small. Everybody was like low to the ground, circle up. It was mosh. I'd never seen anything like that before, and certainly not when I was still here in New York. But I'm gonna give it to Booby. I love his you know, Frankenstein monster thing. And then of course my secondary one would be John Watson with what he used to do, what I used to call the platoon, that thing where he would just suddenly shoot his arms up in the air like, ah! You know, it was really fucking ballet-like. Those two together, those were like, my night was complete when I saw them, you know. Oh, that's easy. It would have to be a Killing Joke at the Ritz. And I'm not a super huge Killing Joke fan, but how the show unfolded, anybody who spent any time at the Ritz back in the old days knows what the kind of place that was. Got into a fight with 3 bouncers, got fucking thrown out. The only reason that they didn't knock my teeth out of my head was because my mom happened to be there with me. So as they're about to take me down those marble stairs in the front to throw me down, I go, hey, my mom. And they kind of look, and then they ghosted, they disappeared. So I'm still pissed off that 1, I paid $20 to see the show. 2, I've never seen Killing Joke. And at this point now, I can't go back in time and do it. But I didn't get my ass kicked by the bouncers, so at least there was that, you know.
Oh, so you didn't get to see him play?
I didn't get to see him play, man. I didn't get to see him play. They were fucking tossing people out like crazy. Right. And the guy bumped into me, and I kind of look at him, and he goes, what the fuck are you looking at? I go, you bumped into me. And then it was like a bang, you know, out. I'm gonna say, and I'm sure you remember, I'm gonna give an easy pick and not quite such an easy pick. Those 3 nights of the Bad Brains at CB's was fucking revelatory, absolutely revelatory, because, you know, a lot of guys who watch this, maybe a lot of people were in bands, but if you're playing the same venue 3 nights in a row, you're essentially doing a 3-hour set that you have to build a dynamic into, so that you can't play the same stuff from the night before. You have to change your shows. It's got to be all, and every night was shining genius every night. So that would be my number one pick. But that's an obvious one. My less than obvious one would have to be SSD in Staten Island at the Paramount, because of course that was attended by a riot. But they came down, and there was always that kind of antipathy between DC and kind of New York and Boston, and they came down. I mean, they had always bonded with New York a little bit better, but the SSD just killed it. So,
while we're here, I know we talked about this before, but it's one of my personal favorites.
Yep.
You got to tell the Staten Island riot story. Like just how
the cuisines. Well, the thing is, I don't think anybody thought that it was going to get weird, right? It was just like, now I'm a native New Yorker. I'd moved to California. I came back. There were a bunch of California cats at that show too. Sam McBride from Fang, and because the Dead Kennedys were on, so Dead Kennedys, Road Crew, Microwave, all those guys. I mean, I guess I should have known, but I remember coming out of the Paramount. It's a great show, no problem, nothing at all. And I'm standing out front talking to Lazar, and some guy comes up and says something. I turn to somebody, says something to Lazar. She used to have this chain belt, but not the big dookie chain, but like a bicycle chain belt. And she took it off, and I thought she was just adjusting her clothing. I'm trying to say something to somebody else, and she grabs the belt and whips it across this guy's face. I was like, whoa, hey, fuck off, and the guy runs off. And I go, what happened? She said, he called me a bitch or something like that. I didn't think it, so we're still talking. The guy runs back and throws a baseball bat like a spear, and it's stuck in the window of the store that was right next to the theater. And then I punched him in the face. He scrambled off, came back with some other dudes, and it was like, as I'm punching him in the face, Lazar was kicking him and stomping him, and it was like, then I remember us beating these guys down, and then riding back to the ferry on the top of Booby's rust-colored station wagon, Woody. If you remember, I mean, it was, and you know what was weird? Like, I always see scenes like that in movies, and I was like, I wonder, where the fuck are the cops? There's shootouts and the cops never come. But this was one of those situations, I didn't see a cop that whole night. Like, not at all. We were breaking glass and people getting fucked up in the streets, not a single fucking cop. It was really pretty perfect that way. I'll tell you the people who changed my way of thinking about things. Dez, I mean, I understood why Henry worked, but vocally, what Dez did was sort of a magical. As proof of that in my mind was the idea that he really couldn't keep doing it, right? I mean, that's why they got Henry, because pushing it the way he was like on the edge of musicality, but still having a kind of raw emotional base, it's not something he could do every night, right? But I really like his tone, and I remember listening to the record and thinking, I've never heard anything like this before. Hardcore vocals, it's gonna be weird that I don't pick HR, but what the Bad Brains did was so unique that it was non-duplicatable. I mean, it's not even like you could learn anything from it, particularly as a front guy or a stage performer. My second pick for vocals would have to be, again, West Coast bias here. I'm gonna have to go with Lee Ving, man. I like the kind of blues influence. He was a little older, and I liked his edge, I liked, it was smart agit-prop as far as I'm concerned. And then the third vocalist, here, I'm gonna go for a sentimental pick, man. And I don't know how many people even remember this, but I remember sleeping at the rehearsal spot for Agnostic Front when they were rehearsing with John Watson as the first singer. And I fucking loved him in that role, man. I really did love him in that role. The fighters that have influenced me, you got Sakuraba, Japanese guy, who's now retired. You got, he's in trouble again today, I find out. John Jones, light heavyweight champion at present. He's been a major influence because I can see how he's thinking about fighting. And of course, I would be remiss in not mentioning Rickson Gracie, who, sadly, his attitude about fighting was like, if I'm gonna fight, you're gonna pay me. If you're not gonna pay me, I'm not gonna fight. but he was widely renowned as being the best Gracie of all the Gracies, and because they had different mothers, some of them. So, and if you actually watch or are lucky enough to go online to see some of his jiu-jitsu, it's beautiful. So those are my 3 big influences, and all for the same reason, because you can watch them and you can see them, you can see them create as they're creating, which is rare. We do it with music all the time, you make accommodations, minute adjustments, you switch, but when those guys do it in a fight, in a cage, a fight scenario, it's pretty phenomenal. Well, I remember when I came back at one point before Agnostic Front had really hit, and Vinnie was like, Eugene, we're gonna be in a skate band, and I go, man, can you skate? He goes, I'm trying, and then he was talking to me about his grandfather's pigeons. And he was like, Eugene, man, we'd stand out here, and my grandfather, I'd see my grandfather's pigeons, and I was like, it's New York City, man. He was like, yeah. I go, how do you know they were your grandfather's pigeons? Like we're standing at CB's, and you look up in the sky and you see some pigeons, and you say to he goes, they are my grandfather's pigeons because I'm telling you they're my grandfather's pigeons. That's it. To me, that was like Candide by Voltaire. Like, if Dr. Pangloss says it is so, it must be so. I don't have any major regrets, but what I realize is how poorly I used my time back then, right? Like, I'm 50 times more productive now than I was at 20. And yeah, I'm not complaining. Like, I had a good time. But if I had a sense of how long I was going to be alive and how much shit I needed to accomplish, I would have been way busy. The cats that impressed me back in 80, 81, 82 were those guys, you would see them at shows, you would see them on the scene, but it was clear to me that they had just come back from somewhere or they were going to somewhere and they were fucking busy. And I can name those guys. Roger, I never saw Roger just fucking hanging out. He was coming back from somewhere or he was going somewhere and doing something. He had his apron on. At some point he was working in the kitchen or something. I was always busy. And I think productivity at the end of your days, at the very least, you can say, I did this shit, and that's worthwhile. So that's my message to the youth.